Why, hello and welcome everybody. It is Pohx again, brought to you with my friend Mr. Fireball. But anyway, so today I kind of want to go ahead and give you guys a bit of like all videos combined in one Blight character build to an extent. So I'm going to go over like how to level your bandits, when to go CI, if the build is expensive or not, one-hand variant slash two-hand variant, low-life variants kind of, and I guess whatever content I think of while I'm doing it. So, first off, let's talk about essentially how to level the character, because a lot of people always ask this question, and I guess this is also in line with the new manifesto if people are going to be asking me, did the skill get buffed because they said they changed like how the AoE works? My answer to that is wait for patch notes. Okay, so all you would pretty much do is wear a tabula rasa. You would ideally want to use Elrion jewelry. You don't need something crafted like this. This is for like endgame. You would just want like a minus mana cost of skills. Because Blight literally costs almost no mana, as you can see, it costs 4. Elrion jewelry works very, very well for it. And then you would just level with the following links. You can just use Blight, increased AoE, rapid decay, void manipulation, controlled destruction, and empower. You could use probably like faster casting instead of empower for leveling, since you probably won't really have much cast speed. The last gem is really up to you. I wouldn't really recommend using empower until you get a Zergl's Crank, if you choose to go Zergl's Crank, and empower should always be your last link. You don't want to use it over like rapid decay or void manipulation. Bandits are pretty simple. It's just kill, kill, kill. There's really nothing else to do. If you wanted to help Illyra, I guess you could. Alternatively, if you wanted to get endurance charges or something else, you could as well. Personally, I like Abyssal Cry over everything because there's no double dipping value, so Rallying Cry is not as strong. In terms of when you should go CI as well, when you're transitioning on your tree, because this is kind of like what your tree looks like, I personally was leveling actually as a life-based character. This was actually a life-based character when I made it. Now it's a CI character, and I actually did not go CI until I got Vile Bastion, which means at my completion of Uberlab, which for me, since it was like day 3 in the league, I was like mid-80s. You could definitely do it without Vile Bastion. I would just recommend getting Vile Bastion as soon as you can, because this energy shield regeneration is really, really sick, especially due to the fact that you cannot leech with Blight. So I think this really makes like super good use of it. So next up would be, I guess, like how expensive the build is. So I started as day 1 in the league. Character's level 100 now, and personally, when I first started, it wasn't really very expensive. Obviously, the character now is worth, you know, maybe 20, 30 exalts, but that's because of the amount of time I put into it in gear. So, Zergl's Crank would be your #1 required staff if you want to do a 2-hand variant. If you want to go low life or 1-hand, low life would need a Shavs, 1-hand and shield. You could go basically Breath of the Council, which is a drop you can get from, I actually don't even remember what it's called, Pale Council. And you would just get like a high ES shield and wear Skin of the Loyal, which is off Chalupa, which Skin of the Loyal gives +1 all gems. And Breath of the Council would give 10% increased AoE, which actually completely negates the AoE off Beast for Yalia. But you also do not get the Zergl's Crank proc, which is why I personally would recommend, if you want to do something like bossing, go 1-hand shield. If you want to map, I personally would prefer Zergl's, although I wouldn't even recommend Blight for bossing. Anyway though, that's pretty much it. I would recommend wait till about at least 7k energy shield before you go CI as well. Alright, so next up would be, I don't know why it says live JK. Next up would be, I guess, showing you guys the map clear. So there's a lot of I guess, question asked of whether or not my character is a Blight build or just Blight carried by Abyssal Cry. And I want to kind of clarify and show you guys that you can totally use Blight just by itself, and it's honestly like, it's not that bad once you put the time and effort into it. Granted, pretty much every skill is like that. So, I'm not even going to use Abyssal Cry here. And you can tell it's not the fastest of skills, but it's still clearing, right? Like, Abyssal Cry isn't necessary for that. Abyssal Cry just adds this huge AoE, which is what gives you the clear speed. It's kind of like, the way I like to kind of compare it, and people laughed at me when I said this before, but it's kind of like Essence Draining Contagion, right? you don't really use one without the other, you kind of intertwine the skills. I personally feel that Abyssal Cry and Blight synergize so well. They both scale the exact same way almost, and they both have to do with slowing targets. And overall, I think it just combines to be like a pretty solid skill. Although, again, personally, Blight is definitely on the weaker side of skills. I would say the skill needs like an overall maybe 20% AoE increase, alongside with like maybe a 30% damage increase. But more importantly, they need to reduce the way the maximum stacks work. So instead of getting 20 stacks, it should just be like 5, and they should just compensate the damage. Because it's kind of silly, like here I'm just using 1 or 2 stacks on the mobs. Here's 1 stack, and the monster, well, here's 2 stacks now, and the monsters will die from just that. But it shouldn't be like that, you know. It shouldn't have to work so hard to get it just to clear a T11 map realistically. So some other things I would say as well. Dying Sun really does a lot for this character, as it does for pretty much like every build that scales with AoE. Dying Sun is also very expensive. It's like over 700 chaos. Although, to be fair, I didn't get a Dying Sun until level 99 because I wanted to see like how OP it really was. So, I used a Witchfire Brew instead of a Dying Sun, and what I mean by that is I essentially, with a Dying Sun, ended up dropping Arctic Armor. If you guys have watched any of my previous build guides. And instead, I put on the AoE from Dying Sun, and by removing Arctic Armor, I was able to run Blasphemy Vulnerability, and it kind of makes up the damage for it, because now Vulnerability scales off of Aura Effect, because it's on a Blasphemy, which tags it as a curse. And I do lose, however, the like 70, actually it's like 90-something% increased damage, but they, like I said, they cancel each other out, and it feels bad when I don't have any TPs. Okay, so next up, in terms of everything else that I use on the character, we have a total of, I already went over these, but I'll just go over them again. We've got Blight, Ink AoE, Rapid Decay, Void Manipulation, Controlled Destruction, Empower. In my helmet, I've got Enlightened, Temp Chains, Vulnerability, Blasphemy. Again, you don't have to use this variant. You can use my older one, which basically just runs Arctic Armor. It's more tanky, has less clear speed. I would recommend going for a Temp Chains Curse Effect, Blight Secondary Slow Duration, or Blight Increased AoE is really good. Things that are required to get this build working, I would say, would be like Zergal's Crank. Beast Fur is not required, but it's so cheap for how good it is. And Eye of Cheula would be like the 3 mandatory ones. So for rings, I ended up Elrion crafting one of my rings. Unfortunately, I could have made this a lot better and I fucked up on it. So it's got essentially 21 ES, 17% max ES, 10 all res. Instead of the 21 maximum energy shield, I would highly recommend you Leo craft instead. And you can use a faster start of energy shield recharge, which is way better. The other ring, I've got a Dream Fragments. I like it for mapping. I would never use this for bossing, really. But for mapping, I think it's like super, super good. Next up, Eye of Cheula. I think we already went over this. Cannot be immune, or basically cannot be stunned, is super important on CI builds. So when you tag this together with Dream Fragments, you can never be frozen and you can never be stunned. It feels really good on your character to never be like immobile. Gloves, you just want high ES gloves. I didn't really look too much with essences. Probably could have done like a better one with like Delirium or something, or not Delirium. I forgot what it's called, the movement speed ones. Like you could put Flame Dash in there for extra cast speed and whatnot. I personally chose an Ascent from Flesh chain belt. I think Ascent from Flesh overall gives you the best bang for your buck, really. It doesn't give you much ES, but it gives you a little bit of everything else, and it gives you essentially free dodge while phasing. So if you have Flask Effect on your tree, your Quartz Flask will give you 13 dodge and 13 spell dodge, plus the 6% dodge if you're phasing, puts me up to 19% dodge, which I think is really good. Also, it's important to note that if you don't have a reliable mobility skill, Flame Dash does have charges, I would recommend having some type of phasing to essentially run through breaches and run through monsters to never get blocked. My boots, in my opinion, Death's Door are absolutely insane. I used Rainbow Stride up to level 99 and swapped to Death's Door. Death's Door gives you bleed immunity, which means you don't ever have to have a bleed immune flask, which frees up a flask, which essentially allows you to run another unique flask. The elemental status ailment duration doesn't really matter that much. You should be immune to freeze, you should be immune to shock if you choose to. Ignite, same thing. So the only thing that's really annoying is, I think, chill with this. +1 endurance charges is cool for when you're mapping with someone else, and then you get the strength bonus, which should allow you to respec strength nodes if you have them allocated for Abyssal Cry, although I can't remove this one yet. And then I've got Vault Discipline, Increased Duration, Vault Discipline, Vault Clarity. Vault Clarity you don't really need to use solo, this is because I was running with a support. And then in the boots we've got Wither, Spell Totem, Flame Dash, Faster Casting. I've got my Discipline and my Offset right here. Abyssal Cry, Void Manip, Item Rarity, Poison, Ink AoE. You could use Added Chaos, that works for Abyssal Cry. You could also use, I believe, Increased Duration if it has a duration tag, which it does. And that pretty much goes over all of the links on my character. Again, the auras that I'm running right now is Temp Chains, plus Vuln, and then I run Discipline. And that's enough mana for me to do whatever it is that I need to do. So in terms of my skill tree, I would recommend, so I personally played life-based, so I do have videos, I believe, going over the life-based variants, but it would be pretty simple. So you would essentially grab adjacent life next to you, right? So you would start off, and I would probably scale through spell damage, to be honest, if you're leveling, right? And you just branch off, grab life. Come inside, grab life. Come down, you're at Scion Life Wheel. You can see there's literally life all over the tree for you. If you come up towards here, which I don't believe I grabbed at the beginning, but if you come up to here, you've got life, Cruel Preparation. As you come across through here to the shadow side, Melding has life. There's life here at Heart and Soul. You've got life at Written in Blood. You could even come through here to grab the life at Blood Drinker, and you could also even grab the life if you came through Trickery or down through here. So it's very easy to level as a life variant, and you know, you choose pretty much when to go CI at that point. You don't really have to go too far out of your way, which was really nice. So yeah, that's pretty much going to be my character. This character is not designed for bossing. I feel like I have to repeat this all the time for a lot of the newer players. So essentially, when you're playing hardcore in Path of Exile, unless you're playing something super OP and super meta, then your build is designed for a specific thing. So this character was built very defensively, made to not die, and eventually was kind of formed and merged a little bit to hit level 100. The reason why it's not good for bossing is the way my character works is it's based around Zergal's Crank. Zergal's Crank states that you have a 20% chance for energy shield recharge to start when you block. So my character has multiple layers of defense, right? I've got currently 57% block, 10% spell block, 19% dodge, 13 spell dodge, not really any armor or evasion, but Basalt gives me a little bit of mitigation. Previously I ran Arctic Armor, which gave me another layer of mitigation, right? So, but Zergal's Crank states that you have a 20% chance for your energy shield recharge to start, meaning I have to get hit. If a boss hits you, you're taking huge amounts of damage. However, when my Zergal's does proc, I have a 5,000 ES recharge that it lasts for 4 seconds, which is 20,000 energy shield. The reason why it doesn't stop is because with Wicked Ward, you gain 100 maximum energy shield. And your energy shield recharge is not interrupted if it started recently. So you have that 4-second window where you just keep healing over and over and over. So this makes it really good for things like breaches, mapping, when monsters are just constantly shooting at you, dealing little amounts of damage, and then proccing Wicked Ward. Well, actually proccing Zergal's, which then goes alongside with Wicked Ward. So in terms of also my Ascendancy, I personally would recommend going Profane Bloom, then Void Beacon, then Wicked Ward, and finally Vile Bastion. I'm pretty sure that kind of concludes this character. If you guys want some footage of, I guess, like... Well, I have a form guide, actually. I'll link down maybe in like a couple hours after the video is posted. But if you have any specific questions, I can make some more videos. I'm pretty much done with this character, though. I'm working on my Low Life Righteous Fire character. I could still potentially do like a better leveling in-depth guide, maybe, I don't know, after. But this is the character I'm working on now, which his content and guides will be to come of later. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys had a wonderful time. If you did, please feel free to hit the like button. Also, remember you can catch me streaming live every day at twitch.tv/Pohx. Hope you guys have a wonderful time, like I said before. I'll see you boys all tomorrow. Take care, everybody.